Good to see a full house. I have several proclamations to read tonight. It's a whereas night, I guess. The first one is for National Service Recognition Day. And whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how we meet our challenges, and whereas the nation's counties and cities are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as a cost-effective strategy to meet their needs, and whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants address the most pressing challenges facing our communities, from educating students for the jobs of the 21st century and supporting veterans and military families, to providing health services and helping communities recover from natural disasters. And whereas national service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 50,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. And whereas national service participants increase the impact of the organizations they serve, both through their direct service and by managing millions of additional volunteers. And whereas national service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact and increase the return on taxpayer dollars. And whereas national service participants demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. And whereas the Corporation for National and Community Service shares a priority with county officials and mayors nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and mayors and county officials across the country for the Mayor and County Recognition Day for National Service tomorrow on April 4th, 2017. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Mark Peterson, do hereby proclaim April 4th, 2017 as National Service Recognition Day. The next one just came from an event at Winona National Bank where we proclaimed Child Abuse Prevention Month. I'll read that as well. Whereas children are vital to our state's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, as well as being our most vulnerable assets, and whereas all children deserve to have the safe, stable, and nurturing homes and communities they need to foster their healthy growth and development. And whereas child abuse and neglect is a community responsibility affecting both the current and future quality of life of a community, and whereas communities that provide parents with the social support, knowledge of parenting and child development, and concrete resources they need to cope with stress and nurture their children and ensure all children grow to their full potential. And whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of partnerships created among citizens, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And now, therefore, I, Mayor Mark Peterson, hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the city of Winona. And then last proclamation is whereas the Winona Senior High School girls basketball 2016-17 season record was 26-5, which is a new school record. And whereas the team became the second girls basketball team to win a Big Nine Conference championship, and whereas 2 of those appearances have been in the last 2 years. And whereas the Winhawks competed in back-to-back state championship games, and whereas the 2016-17 tournament team has 18 players, 4 coaches, and 2 managers, and whereas the Winona Senior High School band and Winona community were a big part of the total team effort, and whereas the Winhawks girls basketball team made Winona proud. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Mark Peterson, do hereby proclaim this 3rd day of April 2017 as Winhawk Girls Basketball Day. Congratulations. And we're all very proud of you, and I'd like to present this to whoever I should give it to him.
Mayor,
Yes?
could we have each one of the
Right.
girls stand up and give your name, your position, your year in school?
Can I hand this to somebody first, and then we will do that. Thank you very much. And now, as George says, if you would introduce yourselves and
Abby Winter, I'm a forward and I'm a senior. Justine Schultz, a guard, a senior. I'm Casey Moger, guard, and a senior. I'm Ian Nibling, I'm a guard and I'm also a senior. Danica Bagley, senior and a center. Miranda Shelley, guard, senior. Emma Dollenberg, senior, center. Brittany Winter, guard, sophomore. Kylie Olson, sophomore, guard. Sarah Halverson, guard, junior. Rachel Walters, guard and senior. Selena Lord, guard and junior. Gabriel Jacobs, guard and junior. Lady Rakowski, guard and junior.
coaches and managers, you got to do this too.
Matt Van Straten, coach. Kyle Martin, JV coach. Kevin Martin, coach.
And Tim Gleason, coach. I'd just like to thank the entire city of Winona, and especially our school and all of you. It was a wonderful event, and so privileged to be able to do 2 times and to experience that. And there's nothing like walking up the tunnel in Williams Arena, seeing all that orange and black across the way. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one last thing, and I'd like to ask Carlos to come up, and he's going to give us a development code update. A short one, I'm told.
Not nearly as
Oh,
exciting as.
if you want to stay for the meeting, you're welcome to.
Can we go to Mary?
Mark, can we go?
Yeah, they didn't raise their hand, did they?
No, they were there.
Oh, I didn't hear.
No, you were looking over here.
That was nice.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Not nearly as exciting as girls basketball, but I have an update on the development code update here. We're nearing the end of almost a 2-year process updating the city's zoning code and development code from 1960. We have a public hearing scheduled for next week, Monday, April 10th, in front of the Planning Commission. Notice for that meeting went out to individual property owners 2 weeks ago and was published in the paper last week. At that meeting next week, the Planning Commission could recommend adoption of the development code or could recommend tabling a decision on that to the next meeting and continuing the public hearing and or meeting and approving the development code update at that meeting. We anticipate changes to be made based on public input at the Planning Commission level before the final draft is forwarded to Council. In May, we anticipate bringing it to a May 1st pre-council meeting to give Council an introduction to the overview of the development code, and then bringing it back on the 15th for a public hearing and introduction, as well as forwarding it to adoption in June. That's all I have, just a brief update. Any questions at this time?
Mayor?
Yeah, George.
Carlos, the meeting on April 10th, what is that going to involve? Is that going to be involving in the east end of town, or?
It's a citywide meeting involving both changes to the comprehensive plan and the adoption of the development code in front of the Planning Commission.
I know Mankato Avenue was mentioned down there for discussion.
Mankato Avenue is a site of one of the mixed-use neighborhood areas for rezoning, and so notices were sent out to everybody within that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. And that's all I have, City Manager?
Two things, Your Honor. First, some folks in the community might have noticed that the community service organization sign that it was at Huff Street and 61 is no longer there. It fell down due to old age. We are working on either putting another one back up or actually maybe even two on the outer edges of the community. So if any community service organization wants to know where their sign is, it's at the street shop, and we were taking good care of them. The second is, on behalf of the fire chief, we wanted to thank folks who came out and donated up to a little over $9,000 was raised at an event out at Hy-Vee. The fire department's going to be using those proceeds to buy 2 thermal imaging cameras that are built right into the mask of the SCBA face piece. Right now, we currently have handheld ones, and the ones that will be mounted on the mask will be very important for the fire department because it frees up both of their hands for doing firefighting activities. If there's any money remaining, they expect to use those for additional personal protective equipment to help firefighters get away from the exposures to any cancer-causing toxins. A special thank you we want to go out to a 15-year-old Aurora Magnuson for her generous donation. Aurora had been saving for several months to purchase a new cell phone, and she contributed those funds for the donation to the fire department. So a big shout out to Aurora and for everybody else who contributed. That's all I have.
Okay. Have roll call.
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councilman Thurley.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Alexander. Here. Iden. Here. Borzakowski.
Here.
Scholmeyer.
Here.
Under the required public hearings, item 2.1 is the local historic designation of the Winona Elementary Schools. This is a public hearing.
I'll declare the public hearing open, and I understand Myron and Kendall Larson have a presentation. Well, okay, PowerPoint.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, both Kendall and I will give you an overview of the findings of the Heritage Preservation Commission with regard to the local designation of the 4 elementary schools in Winona. With that, I will hand it over to Kendall, and she'll provide you some background on the properties.
As you know, through the City Code, the HBC is tasked with the promotion of the rehabilitation and conservation of historic properties for the education, inspiration, pleasure, and enrichment of the citizens and visitors of Winona. The HBC does this in a variety of ways, one of which is to recommend to the City Council properties which meet criteria of significance stated herein for designation as heritage preservation sites. So the HBC recommends 4 historic buildings: Madison School, Central Grade School, Washington Kosciuszko School, and Jefferson School for local designation. In 2012, all 4 historic structures received National Registration for Historic Places designations. All 4 schools are on the National Register for their historic significance. They are excellent representations of the 20th century developments in Winona's public education, which includes a move to be more progressive and child-centered. The buildings were paid for by public funds, both federal, through the Public Works Administration projects, and locally by Winonans. All 4 buildings were built by architects Boyan, Schubert, and Sorensen of Winona and La Crosse. Central Grade School, built in 1930, is of the Gothic Revival style. Madison School, which was built in 1932, is also of the Gothic Revival style. Washington Kosciuszko, built in 1934, is of the Art Moderne style. And Jefferson School, built in 1938, was built again of the Art Moderne style. It was also listed for both historical significance and architectural significance, and is an excellent example of the Art Moderne style for an educational building. In 2010, so going beyond Winona, in 2010, Aaron Hannafina Berg of the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota called all our 4 schools one of the best collections of historic schools in the state of Minnesota. And for the reasons listed in the local designation forms, and especially for the school buildings as one of the best collections of early 20th century progressive child-centered education architecture in Minnesota, the HBC recommends each of these buildings for local designation.
Just kind of go over the process that the HPC went through to bring it to the City Council this evening. You know, the process is outlined in City Code. In this instance, the Winona HPC initiated the local designation. As part of the code, we solicit review and comment by both the Planning Commission and the State Historic Preservation Office. We also hold public hearings, and the public hearing we held in this instance was on March 8th. Over and beyond that, at the start of the process, the HPC held an informational meeting which gave the community an opportunity really on the front end to talk about the designation. So we kind of went over and beyond what the city code requires. And then of course the public hearing is required by the council, and designation requires a supermajority of the council. The existing zoning of the properties really doesn't change. Of the 4 schools, 3 of the schools are zoned R2. The 4th school, Central School, I believe is a mixture of R2 and R3 zoning. That will not change at all. And if we do go forward with local designation, there are some guidelines, however, that do apply. The principal guidelines are the certificate of appropriateness. And basically a certificate of appropriateness with a local designated property is required for any exterior repair or alteration on that building. It's also required for the demolition of a building, construction of a new building or addition, or construction or replacement of items that really are within view of the public right-of-way. COAs are not required for painting, interior remodel, use or change of use of the structure, so we really don't weigh in on the change of use of a structure, emergency repairs, or maintenance or reconstruction when they use identical materials. Some of the comments from the HPC public hearing: 9 Winona residents provided comments at the March 8th meeting. 7 comments were generally in favor of the local designation, and 2 comments for the most part were opposed to that designation. The comments generally in favor, they mentioned that the existing National Register status does not provide the same level of protection as a local designation. Was commented that many Winonans regret the demolition of some of the historic assets that Winona has had. Some cited an example of the middle school apartments as an excellent example of a successful reuse and repurpose of school properties. It's okay to repurpose those properties, but to keep the exterior design. The buildings were designed to be simple, strong, and stand the test of time. And finally, the argument was placed that Winonans built and paid to maintain the schools, and we should have significant input in their fate. Comments generally opposed. They said if it's determined that the school should be closed, the future developer of that property should have some input into the historic designation of the property. In this instance, one layer of government is placing a financial obligation on a second layer of government, basically equating 2 unfunded mandates. And then another argument that was placed that the city should bear some of the costs related to the preservation of these properties. And then I'll hand it over to Kendall to kind of wrap this up.
So the local designation outlines, the reason we've moved this forward is it outlines a process that demands local discussion and community input. It also has a review process and decisions with regards to the exterior treatment of the structures, and that becomes local. It does not prohibit the reuse or repurpose or even demolition of any structure. Local designation does require a review, the certificate of appropriateness by the HBC, but all of the HBC's decisions may be appealed to the City Council.
Thank you, and we'll be available for questions if you have any.
Okay. All right, it's a public hearing. If anybody's here and would like to speak, we invite them to come forward to the microphone and state their name and address. And with the large number of people we have here, we'd like to limit that to 3 minutes if possible. So we'll now accept comment from the public. Anybody here wish to speak?
Having been a teacher, I don't have many chances anymore to talk to a group. My main thesis tonight is
Name and address, please.
Oh, my name is Rosemary Broughton. I live at 528 West Wabasha, right across from Madison School. I have lived there for 34 years, and I do not expect that I will be there 34 years from now. My main thesis today is I believe architecture creates a culture. It not only manifests the culture in which it came to be, it also continues to create a culture. And I say this from my experience of working at the College of St. Teresa, which I think most of us can admit are beautiful structures. In the confusion and bewilderment and difficulty of the last few years of teaching there, I was amazed at graduation time that the young women turned out so well. How were they so well balanced? How did they have this sense of being engaged and being engaging? How did they have this sense of even simple elegance? And my conclusion at that time was that the buildings taught them. The walls taught them. So when we graduated them, they were indeed a great group of young women. I hope that you will take the decision to register these buildings as historic structures for reuse, or if they need to be demolished, at least there is some civic input on that. I am concerned about new housing structures that I see within this community. And this is a bit of a subjective reaction. I look at some of them and I find them impersonal, anonymous, and they basically say, you don't count. It feels like they will warehouse their residents, but not be an inviting structure for human beings. Now again, this is my reaction to them. A different situation arises for me at the blue-gray structures at 5th and Huff, which I find very engaging, and I believe they were built in the 80s. They match the neighborhood, they match the site. So I think whatever happens to our schools, again, I hope we can maintain the historic structure for reuse. But I would like some control to the design of any new construction that might take place. And again, my thesis is architecture not only manifests a culture, but architecture creates a culture.
Thank you. Anybody else? There we go.
My name is Steve Shield. I live at 1282 West Broadway. I am a member of the school board, but I'm here speaking on behalf of myself, not of the board. I don't know that I'm going to change anybody's mind here. I'm not going to attempt to. but I will repeat what I've said before, which is that pure and simple, what the local designation is going to do is give the city veto power over whatever might happen with those buildings. And that is because the local designation is the one that for any exterior construction project other than those cited on the slide that was presented, it's going to, any such exterior change is going to require approval from the council. And that means that this body, rather than the school board, which bears the obligation, the responsibility through the Minnesota Constitution to offer a free public education, and which also has the obligation for paying the bills, it would be you folks rather than the school board that is dealing with that. Anybody who's paying attention knows that what the school district's financial trouble is. That is not because we have done things poorly. It is because we are part of a huge demographic wave going through this country. People simply don't have as many kids as they used to. We've got physical plant for the same, we now have about 3,000 students, and it peaked at just under 4,700 about 20 years ago. So I guess the main thing that I want to say here is that it is just a fact that applying this designation is the one that will indeed give the city veto power over anything that the school board might want to do with those buildings. And I don't think that's a very good way to do public policy, because what it would mean is that it's the school board, which means, by the way, it is your constituents as well as ours who will bear every nickel of response that will, every nickel of expense, I should say, that will come up with that. So, as I said, I'm smarter than to think I'm going to change minds. I expect people have entrenched positions here, but all I'm asking that you do is consider the reality of what you're going to do, and that is take away from the layer of government that has the obligation to take care of those buildings and to provide kids with education. You'll be taking it away from the board, whether I'm on it or not, and you'll be giving it to yourselves. And I think the other thing is, I think this historic preservation thing is a big public policy issue. The statement is routinely made that the city values its history. And if that's the case, you folks all know how it goes. We pay for what we value. And if this sort of thing is going to continue, then I would urge the city to think about real ways to come up with money, rather than to say, gosh, it would be nice if we could offer some money. But it just doesn't strike me as reasonable in any sense to have one body of government impose costs on another and then stand back and say, we bear no responsibility for that expense. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Darrell Downs. I'm a small forward from 327 West King, Winona. Been there for 25 years. Thank you for considering the local historic designation for these schools. These buildings are historically distinctive inside and out. They are positive cornerstones of Winona that should be preserved. These buildings were built to last by generations of Winonans to serve as safe, accessible schools, and I believe we owe it to those Winonans to be better caretakers. These buildings add property value to our neighborhoods, and if preserved, will continue to do so well into the future. With your commitment to a local designation, these buildings can become part of a larger effort to attract and retain families in the core of Winona and to further develop our economy. It should not be easy to destroy or sell these buildings. They represent our public investment, and this designation means that proposed changes to these buildings will be accountable to the citizens that paid for them. To me, that's fair and reasonable. To anyone that claims that this is not your business, I would disagree. These buildings have been the public's business for generations, and our community continues to support the district referenda. It's not the fault of Winona or Winona citizens if the school board fails to make the maintenance of these buildings a high priority. It is not possible to refer to this as an unfunded mandate when the community continues to fund and continues to fund in the future referendum to help pay for these schools. Thank you for considering historic designation as a priority, and thank you to the HPC for its unanimous vote for local designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening, Council. My name is Allison Kwame. I live at 309 East 10th. I'm in the 3rd Ward. I am also a member of the school board, the newest school board member, but I am here speaking on behalf of myself, not representing the school board by any means. One of the things that I've been spending the last 3 months doing is researching and trying to learn as much as I possibly can about the state of education in Winona. And a big part of that research has been to learn about the facilities and understand where our priorities have been in terms of the facilities. And then, of course, learning more about what does the National Historic Register mean for the school district, what does the local historic registration mean for the district. I've had multiple phone calls with the State Historic Preservation Office, at least 4 different staff members at that office, and I've also had conversations with the Minnesota Department of Education talking about facilities. I admit that there's much that I still need to learn, and I'm working toward learning more, but one of the things that I see here is that with the local historic designation, I don't see that as an adversarial relationship. I see that as a potential partnership, that we could be allies, that we could work together to change the way people see these educational facilities. And that's the one thing that I want to see more of, is that this narrative that we have these old decrepit buildings. I would like to see that narrative change and have it be, we have historic buildings. We have the best collection of elementary schools in the state of Minnesota right here in Winona. And again, I'm speaking for myself. You know, one of the things that happens with the National Historic Register, as a public building, the public buildings, we have to go to the State Historic Preservation Office anytime we want to make significant changes to the exterior. So the local historic designation does not change that for us. It adds a layer of local conversation. It does not change. We still have to get permission to change exterior aspects of the building, or if we do anything that changes the character defining features of those buildings. But it makes it local, and people who know this city, know what we value, it would then allow us to have those local conversations. Whereas in the state SHPO office, they may not have as much time. So I would ask that you do take this vote tonight and support the local historic preservation. I think it's a valuable thing for the city. It's a valuable thing if the school board decides to sell these buildings, that the public still has a chance to have a voice in what happens to these publicly funded buildings in our great city. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak?
Good evening, my name is Preston Loing. I live at 351 West Broadway. As you can see, these days I'm kind of a full forward. I am a member of the HPC, but I'm here speaking as a citizen, as an appreciator of architecture, the history of Winona. My wife and family have been here since for the last 20 years, and we just love the architecture, the history, and that kind of thing. And I just hope that we'll be able to find, you will be able to find this particular vote in favor of the historic designation, and that we'll be able to find a creative reuse for these buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Anybody else wish to speak?
My name is Ted Hazelton. I live at 1073 West 5th Street in the western edge of the 2nd Ward, near Jefferson Elementary. I'm a former school board member. I served from 2007 through 2010. And at the tail end of my tenure, this discussion started evolving, and the school board voted to pursue the National Historic Registration, which was a great thing. I too would like to emphasize that this is a wonderful opportunity to provide local protection on these buildings. I'm a history buff. I believe we learn from our mistakes in history. Good example would be the Morgan Block and the city post office. This is why we have these rules and procedures now to protect historic places. These are, as a few other speakers had said, these are publicly funded buildings. The public should have a say in their disposition if the school board chooses to close the school. It does not create a burden, as some members suggested, and it is not one government entity overruling another. How I see it is that it's a chance to work together for the common good and do something creative for the use of these buildings. I support the local designation. I'm asking for you to vote positively on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Anybody else wish to speak? Last chance. Anybody else wish to speak? Hearing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask the council what they would like to do next. Is there a motion?
There's a motion. I would move to approve the attached resolution establishing local historic designation for the school building.
Motion, is there a second by George? Motion by Pam, second by George. Discussion?
I'd like to ask a question from Merle or Kendall. Does the designation have an impact on the mechanicals for the buildings? The air handling units or where they're located? Right now we have boilers in most of these buildings, as I understand. Does it preclude the ability to use air handling units and forced air? Does it have any impact on that?
If the air handling units, if they were visible from the public right-of-way, then it would require a certificate of appropriateness. But for instance, if they were on the roof of the building or somewhere out of public right-of-way site, then no COA would be required.
And the COA is something that the council...
Correct. It's reviewed by the Heritage Preservation Commission, and if the party wishes to do so, they can appeal the HPC decision to City Council.
Other questions or comments? Michelle?
I have a few issues with this. I think if in 2012, when we voted to put it on the National Register, we'd have done the local designation, I would have been in favor of it. My problem with doing it right now is I feel like it's a little bit of a slap towards the school board because they are making a difficult decision. And the interim administrators asked us to wait for this vote until they can determine the process they're going to use for the properties so they don't have to take into account this designation. Because we can designate these properties at any time. I'm not sure that this really is in the best interest of the community. Every time someone wants to demolish a building or rebuild a building, they have to go through a process with the city. You can't just tear things down and rebuild them without going through planning commission, site plans, and getting permission from the planning commission board and then ultimately or possibly us. I would prefer to give Kelly Halverson and the committee a chance to go back through their process, make their determinations for the future, and then possibly bring this back for us to look at, if only because I want to be respectful to the difficult decision the school board has to make. I'm not sure that this is wrong, and I know that someone used the Winona Middle School as a great example of what you can do, but all I see is a dilapidated auditorium because we designated that couldn't be fixed up, that's full of water and pigeons and chipmunks, and that's not what I want to see in my neighborhoods. And I feel like any property owner should get to decide for themselves if they want their building designated. Just like if the county were to come to the city and say, we're going to do this to your buildings without your input, I'm uncomfortable with it because it's one body overlapping another's authority. I feel like the school board can decide for themselves if they want to apply for the local designation and apply to the HBC and to the city, but we didn't give them that chance. And I think when we first approached this is the time we should have done it. I'm not sure why we waited so many years. I mean, I have some input from someone that served at that time, but I don't get it. If it was right now, it was right then. And to do it right at this moment, the only reason I can see to do it at this moment is to impede or somehow restrict or make it more difficult for the school board to make this decision. They have to make the decision. There's no reason we couldn't vote on this after they were done. It changes nothing. The buildings aren't coming down tomorrow. They're not selling them tomorrow. We have months to make this decision. And that's my personal, I'm a history buff. I'm a historian. I am all about preservation. The older the house, the better. Downtown buildings, the same thing. But in this instance, I feel like it was an inappropriate step on our part. And I can't come away from that. Even listening to everyone speak, I can't get past that. The timing is suspect to me because we're doing it now. Why not a year ago? And that's where I am on this. And I can't imagine that there's an argument that will change my position because we can do this anytime. It doesn't have to be today. And all they're asking for is time.
Well, I'd like to maybe respond to a couple of things you said, Michelle. And one is, why has this been put off until now? I was on the Preservation Commission when this first came up, and I know that there was some hesitation on the school board's part about the National Register designation and the local designation at the time. And the feeling was mixed on the Preservation Commission's part. Some people wanted to go ahead with the local designations. Others felt that getting it on the National Register was a good first step. And I remember talking to the school board along with Dr. Greg Gout from St. Mary's, and we told the school board at that time that we were only going to pursue the National Register nomination, and we reserved the right to come back at a later time if it was felt necessary to do the local designations. And I don't think that just anybody can, that there is this kind of public input into demolition. If somebody wants to demolish something, it's not that hard. I think that if it's an important historic property, that it deserves that conversation before that demolition permit. So you have to go, you go to City Hall, you get a demolition permit, but if it's tagged as historic,
well, not for these buildings, because they are registered with the federal government. They have to pay a pretty hefty amount and go through an EW. I mean, they can't just tear it down, even with the demolition permit.
Well, there's a short process, I think, to go through compared. It doesn't give us locally that kind of conversation that we would have if they were locally designated. And I don't see anywhere in the Preservation Commission ordinance here where it says that the city can't designate properties that belong to the school district or the Port Authority or Winona State. I think it's strictly, if these meet the criteria, then they, as they do, obviously, with being on the National Register, then it's obvious to me that these, should follow being locally designated. Now, the timing, I understand your concern about that. It doesn't particularly trouble me, though, that we're doing it at this time. Other comments? If there aren't any, maybe we're ready for a vote. It takes 5 votes. Hopefully we don't have to impose the nuclear option here tonight. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
6-1. Motion carries.
And moving on to the petitions, requests, and communications, item 3.1 is a request for 5K, 10K by Bluffview Montessori to be held on Saturday, May 13th.
Move.
Second.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Michelle. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.2 is a request to hold a parade by Lake Winona Manor on June 13th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by George. Discussion? It's a great parade. That's all I'm going to say. It's really one of the fun things I do every year. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.3 is a request by the Winona Fire Department Union to host a 5K run at East Lake Winona on April 22nd.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Jerry. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.4 is a request for a temporary on-sale wine and malt liquor license for the Polish Cultural Institute Polish Constitution Day celebration on May 6th.
So moved.
Motion by George, seconded by Paul, I think. All those, any discussion?
Get my Polish.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.5 is a request by Paperbacks and Pieces Bookstore for street closure on Saturday, May 6th.
So moved.
Well, then we have a
Second.
second.
Motion by George, seconded by Michelle. All those, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.6 is a request by Motor Parts and Equipment for a custom car truck show on Sunday, September 10th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jerry, seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? Hearing none.
Yes,
all-
Mr. Mayor. I was instructed by these folks to, not to instruct, I was requested to tell you that once this is passed, it is your responsibility to approve favorable weather for that day.
I will, I'll do what I can. That's
Okay.
all I can say. So, I wish I had the power. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Good
Item
weather.
Item 3.7 is a request by the Winona Rotary Club for traffic assistance for their Ride the Ridges on September 16th.
Move approval of that request.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Paul. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
And item 3.8 is Winona Earth Day street closure request for April 22nd.
Move approval of that request.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Paul. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Under new business, item 5.1 is the 2017 state aid street reconstruction project of Hamilton from 2nd to Broadway.
Make a motion to approve the second. One or the other, I don't care.
I heard them both at the same time. So we'll give it to George for the motion, second by Michelle. Discussion.
Yes, the people along this these residents here, they will have an opportunity to upgrade their water line and sewer line as well, if they so wish to have that.
We're upgrading all the sewer lines.
All of them, okay.
And there's only a few that need the water line upgrade, but yes, they will have that,
Okay.
that opportunity.
All right, good.
When was the last time we did Hamilton?
It was constructed.
That's what, because I grew up there, and I was just wondering about how long it's been. It seems like it's ready.
You don't remember that, when you put that in?
Was it concrete
How
when you
old
were
are
a kid?
you, Paul? 'Cause
I'm
you
not
didn't
that old.
share how many years ago that was.
Al?
I have a question. I noticed on the estimate you're talking about removing or abandoned sanitary sewer pipe. Has that been in ever since? Or is that part of the original sewer system
What
in
we're
that area?
doing on that is we're able to shorten it by taking it from a different street.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're only
Abandoning
abandoning
the-
it.
just
It
a-
serves one house and we're gonna bring it
From another district, okay.
just a short line.
Okay. Okay, good, thanks.
George?
When would this project begin?
We're hoping mid-May.
Oh, okay. 3 months to do it, 2 months? 4
Yeah,
months?
Probably three, probably
Okay.
three.
Okay.
So how about the Broadway to the tracks or to Howard?
Yeah, that's scheduled for next year.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. We're not gonna wait for Jerry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.2 is the 2017 Hamilton Street Reconstruction Project Feasibility Report and resolution ordering hearing that would be held on Monday, April 17th.
I make a motion to approve the attached resolution.
I second that.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Pam. Any discussion?
This will give the homeowners a chance, or what is this hearing on? Or anything
This
that's,
is the public hearing regarding the assessments. There's 5 assessments,
okay.
and it gives them the opportunity to voice their opinion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 5.3 is the agreement between Winona County and the city for a watershed agreement.
Make a motion to approve the attached resolution.
I would second that.
Motion by Michelle, and seconded by Pam. Discussion.
Yes, could someone just explain what all this encompasses, I guess?
Mayor and Council, in the recent years, Lake Winona has been designated as impaired due to phosphorus, and it relates to its recreational use. We'll be required in the next few years to remove or to lower that level of phosphorus, and there are all sorts of possibilities of ways of doing that, but the discussion is what is the most cost-effective, what is the most effective at reducing it. This study will go out and find projects and put a dollar number on it, locate them, and say what is estimated the reduction in phosphorus due to that project. So this will hire a consultant to find projects to do, and then we'll bring them back to council and talk about doing them. The city would pay for, what is it, $20,000 of cash, and then the county is administering the grant, and they're also providing some modeling for use by the consultant as well.
Okay.
Question. Does this study also identify sources of the phosphorus and how best to prevent more phosphorus from building up in the lake after we improve it?
That would go back to the TMDL, which already defines the number of sources of where the phosphorus comes from. I think we've seen, like predominantly it's in the fill in the bottom of the lake. The dredging is one of the big ones that needs to be done. The other ones would look for other sources out there, so it would look for other sources. And then it'd quantify what we thought that phosphorus amount would be and what it would cost to reduce it.
Paul?
Does this have so once the study is done, so the county staff is working on finding an expert to do the study. Once the study is done, are we then responsible for any remediation or work that has to be done as a result?
Again, the MPCA is going to require us to reduce the phosphorus. The county and city staff will work together. We're going to issue an RFP to get consultants to come in and propose to us what they can do. We'll select a firm from that, bring it back to you folks, and then they will put together the projects. It doesn't obligate us to do any one of those projects. We're only obligated to do something. We'll have to come back and say if we agree with the consultant, is it cost effective to do this? Is it or should we do something else? And then you get into all the political things of which ones the public will allow and want to be done.
So would the county be sharing in some of that cost? I mean, that's our county ditch, but it comes into the city lake. I mean, so once we get to that point, is there also a shared cost?
My understanding at this point is that the city is responsible for reducing the phosphorus in the lake. The county is not. But a lot of the sources are out in the county, potential sources.
That's how it goes.
George?
Well, it says assessment is estimated to cost $119,600. Where will all that money come from?
That's from the grant. $20,000 is all that the city is paying for out of the storm sewer utility. The rest comes from the grant.
The grant will pick all that up.
And then the county is doing in-kind services. They're providing staff time.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you, Keith. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 5.4 is the Masonic Temple rigging and electric design proposal.
I move to approve the proposal submitted by Miller Dunwoody and execute that staff to use Miller Dunwoody, I guess.
I'll second it.
Motion by Michelle and seconded by Al. Discussion? I have a question, I guess, for Chad, who's worked closely with this firm. I know they do really good work, but our experience has been that they've been slow to deliver. Is there a way to keep them on schedule? Require it?
Mayor and Council, I asked a very similar question to Miller and Dunwoody before the proposal, well, once we received the proposal. I have not heard back from them yet on their project. We asked for a project list and priority list because that has been our experience in the past, is that they're a very excellent firm, but they do take longer than we really desire. And so I haven't heard back yet. Certainly in any of the agreements that we draft, we can outline a timeline and negotiate that timeline with them to keep them, tight to the timeline. But as you see, within the proposal, they're, suggesting construction start in October of 17 through May of 18. So really where we have the control to tighten up that timeline, I guess is what I'm saying, is in that April to June, end of July timeline. We certainly could address that through the contract.
Well, I hope you do, because, it's frustrating when they don't deliver on time. Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 7.1 is council concerns.
We'll start to my left with Al.
Thank you. Apologize for the interesting voice tonight, but whatever is going around has gotten to me. I just would like to remind people that the Winona State International folks are hosting their 30th annual International Dinner, which is coming up this Saturday, April 8th at East Hall at Crisco Commons at Winona State. Tickets are at the International office at Crisco. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Jerry?
Nothing this evening.
Michelle? Pam?
I'll pass.
Paul?
Pass.
Oh, boy.
This is too good. George?
Doesn't mean you have extra time.
No.
It's good to see Brian and Keith here both, because leaving church Saturday, a gentleman said to me, when are we going to get rid of the rumble strips on Mankato Avenue? And I said, well, we've been in discussion with the railroad, and Mankato Avenue Crossing and Louisa and Hamilton, just all proud to tell them that they're going to be repaired sometime this year. He says, no, I mean the rumble strips in front of the hospital. The whole Mankato Avenue stretch out there.
Oh, yeah.
What is planned for repair for that for this year? I know it's the state, but I mean, that road is in rough shape.
Let's talk about the railroad, we're getting you want the bad news or the bad news?
Let's.
2024 is when that has a schedule.
When?
2024. Wow.
That will never make it, as we know.
That's exactly what I told them. That wasn't last week, and they're looking to push it up. But that's the bad news.
Do you want to say that date so people can hear?
2024,
2024.
as in the year of.
Year of 7 years, 8 years from now.
Wow.
No way.
Yeah, that's not acceptable.
Steve, can we get some,
They did say that they had put it early in the schedule, though.
And in 2020,
I think a letter from the council,
because it's in
We'll
very
push that.
bad shape.
We'll push that.
And I feel when they do repair it, it should be done in concrete, because we would not have this because of all the stopping that takes place there, with 2 stoplights as the semis roll around. So it's starting to rut around that corner as well, too. So, all right, thank you on that. And Chad, if we can, next meeting, or just inform council on the upgrades, how they're working out at the new ice, at the ice arena, the refrigeration and all that, just, either send it to us or make a presentation at the council. And Keith, your every 2-year question, update on the methane gas burner. So, okay, and I'd just like to just pass on and just acknowledge the passing of a long-time Fourth Ward resident, that being Joe Noodles McCrae, as we knew him by Noodles. I believe he got that name as his whole working career was spent as a chef. He's best known for his years of working in the kitchen over at the hot fish shop. Then he worked at many different restaurants through town, and then he owned his own in Trempealeau called the Eatery on Main. Joe was a big Viking fan, big Twins fan, great bowler in his younger years, and just want to pass on to his daughter, his mother, his siblings. He'll be missed, and he was really known for his tartar sauce. And that's why I think a lot of people are, outside of missing him, they're going to miss his tartar sauce. Joe was just one great man. Condolences to his entire family. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Under the consent agenda, there are 3 items. The approval of the minutes from March 20th, a claim against the city by Dylan Martinez, and a claim against the city by CP Rail.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Alan, seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Mayor, I move we adjourn and go Gonzaga.
Second.
Motion by George, seconded by Michelle.
I meant on the, the closing of the meeting.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh.
You're North Carolina.
No, I'm not.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Adjourn.
Well, I just.
Did